In this video, I'm going to show you the main points about how to create and analyze pivot tables. The aim of this video is to recap the steps about various features of pivot tables. I have learned about pivot tables recently, however, it is easy to forget the steps, so I thought, why not I make a video not only to recap myself, but to help others also. Beginners can also use this video as long as they have the relevant data source to practice. To create a pivot table, let me explain why we need pivot tables. Pivot tables are the best Excel tool to produce reports and graphs. It's really a dynamic and versatile tool. Like a database query tool, pivot tables are also a great tool too. I'll explain some of the useful features I know about pivot tables. Hope you all find it useful. Before creating pivot tables, there are a couple of things you should know. Make sure the data source range is converted to table. If the range is used in creating pivot tables have to be refreshed manually when the range is modified. It is a headache. But in table, if the table is modified, the pivot table will automatically reflect the modified data source. To convert the range into table, click anywhere inside your data source range. Then at the ribbon, click on the Insert tab. In that, choose Tables. Then select Table again. You'll see a pop-up window. Make sure you check the box to add the table headers. Then click OK and your range is converted to table. Once the table is created, you'll see drop-down arrows on the headers and Design tab is on the ribbon. To create the pivot table, there shouldn't be any blank rows and blank columns in the data source. If there is any blank rows or blank columns, make sure it is deleted before creating the pivot table. If there is a blank row or column, pivot table cannot use full data source. Open your file. Make sure your data is converted to table. If your data is a table, you can see the Design tab on the ribbon and drop-down arrows on the headers. Once you're sure it's a table, click anywhere on the table. Click the Insert tab. In that, choose Tables, then select Pivot Table. You'll see Pivot Table pop-up window appear. In that, select New or Existing Worksheet as per your needs, then click on OK. You'll see an empty pivot table on the left side and the pivot table fields pane on the right side. The pivot table is created, and using the pivot table fields pane options, you can be able to produce the reports the way you want. Sometimes you may not be able to see the pivot table's fields task pane. To view the task pane, click anywhere on the pivot table to activate it, then click the pivot tool, Table Tools, choose Analyze, and then Show Field List. You'll see the pivot table fields task pane appear on the right side. The previous slide showed how to create pivot tables manually. That means user can choose rows and columns as per their needs. Another way to create pivot tables is using recommended pivot table option. For this, click anywhere on the table, then click the Insert tab. Choose Tables, then select Recommended Pivot Tables. In this option, there will be several pivot table designs available. Please be aware that not all the tables is suitable, so before you choose, make sure your chosen pivot table is giving meaningful report. Pivot table is a versatile tool. Reports can be displayed and printed in different ways in just few clicks. Pivot table fields pane can be easily manipulated as per user needs. The fields can be dragged from upper part of fields pane to lower part of the pane, which is divided into 4 areas: filters, columns, rows, and values. I strongly recommend users to practice with different data sources to produce different types of reports. Though it has a separate area for filters, the row and column fields itself act as filters too. This can't be explained by just words, so practice is the best way. I also recommend drag more than one field into column or row area and see how easily reports can be filtered and produced. Like in a database query, more than one field can be dragged to the filter area too, so please Practice, practice, practice. This will help you to produce versatile reports to the need of your business. Pivot Table offers a powerful tool called Expand or Collapse. There are two types of Expand or Collapse. One will apply to entire pivot table. This means that the whole pivot table can expand and collapse as per filters with just one click. This can be done using the tab at the ribbon. This expand or collapse is pictured as a plus and minus near the drill up and down option. Just clicking the plus will expand the entire pivot table, and the minus will collapse the entire pivot table. The same can be done by right-clicking. There, you have to choose Expand or Collapse Entire Field. The another Expand and Collapse is used just for a column and row. Like I mentioned before, row or column labels have got sort or filter option. Using this simple filter or sort can be done to produce reports. Practice is the only key to produce best report using Pivot Table tool. Like I mentioned earlier, drag more than one field into the filter area of the Pivot Table Fields pane. Once the fields are dragged into the filter area, on the top of the pivot table, the fields will appear with a drop-down arrow. Using the drop-down arrow, users can filter for their needs. Now we've moved on to slicers. Slicer features are really powerful and handy to produce reports in seconds. To make you understand slicers, imagine a web page menu options. When you click different options, the page changes. The same way, when you click slicers, the report changes. Please follow the steps shown on the screen to create the slicers. A timeline control is another useful feature which can be added to slicers to produce reports for a certain time period. Using timeline control, reports can be produced within seconds. I strongly recommend use different data sources to practice. If you've made a mistake in dragging fields or producing the pivot table in different, then you can start designing the pivot table from beginning. The easy way is to clear all the fields from the pivot table fields pane. To do that, follow the steps shown on the screen. The another wonderful feature is report field feature. Imagine in a school they want to create a mark sheet using the data source. This can be done by just few clicks, and separate mark sheet can be produced for each student. And every student mark sheet will produce as a separate worksheet. The same way, each month sales or employee can be produced separately using this feature. Basically, multi-reports produced using report field feature in seconds. Please follow these steps on the screen to learn this feature. Pivot Table got lots more wonderful features. Somehow, very few Excel users uses this feature. Once we know this feature, it saves time and enables you to produce various types of reports easily. This is far more better than the database query tool. I like to finish showing how to print the pivot tables. At this moment, I don't have enough time to show you visually how this feature works. That will consume lots of time. My main aim of this video is recapping the different features of pivot tables and how to do that. Hope this video helps both beginners and people who want to recap the steps often like me, because if you don't use these skills regularly, it is easy to forget. See you soon in another video.